the city was changing. The cigarette hit the spot. Oh, a simple distraction from to have and have not. And the radio went silent, and all our heroes had died. Well, you can buy revolution in any color or size.
Well, Force Friday is come and gone, and I don't know how you feel, folks, but it feels a little bit like the day after Christmas around here. The toys have been opened, played with, the remote controls have been opened, and batteries charged and played with. All the new packaging is all over the house, and quite a mess, and I'm just kind of feeling the Star Wars hangover right now. It's been quite a weekend. So, folks, I don't know what your experiences with the Force Friday was, but let you know mine. So, as any good Star Wars fan, I was out on Thursday night, kind of scoping out the stores, seeing what lines were like. I'm lucky enough that I live near a Target and a Toys R Us, so I kind of checked those out around 9 o'clock, and lo and behold, lines had already started. Both stores, as I went there, had about 6 people in line each. Kind of hung out at Toys R Us for a little bit, talked to some of the fans, and decided to go back to Target because, well, it looked like rain was coming, and, well, Target was open, and they were actually letting us line up on the inside of the store, so why not get in out of the rain? So Target seemed to have the, if I'm going to rate the stores, I did not go to a Walmart, but I went to a Target. I ended up going to the Disney store the next day. You know, like I said, went to Toys R Us. I would have to rate Target probably the best as far as going all out for Force Friday. They definitely had employees there that were welcoming the fans, kind of keeping us all excited. They had a raffle for large stuffed animal Chewbacca's. They had 2 sections of toys, kind of one in the toy aisle, one in the kind of the holiday special area where they keep Christmas items or Easter items. Halloween items are actually kind of pushed over a little bit to make way for the Star Wars stuff, but yeah, it was, all in all, it was a good time. Like I said, kind of hung out with the fans. Was also had my mobile device on me, so as I pre-ordered the Star Wars books, they were actually downloading, and I was able to kind of start reading them as I was waiting in line. So that was exciting. Got a head start on Aftermath, but we'll get to that in a minute. But let's talk about the experience of getting the toys, folks, getting the merchandise, because as I've been kind of scouring the internet in the last few days, seeing what other people's experiences were for Force Friday, I noticed that some people did not have as good of a time as others, and some of the stores seem to have dropped the ball a little bit. Now, I know my experience, I ended up being about 25th in line as I made my way back to Target. And lucky for me, I was in the first 25 of the shoppers that were allowed into the Star Wars aisle. They were letting us in 25 at a time. And from there, kind of became a feeding frenzy. It really was kind of a free-for-all. I must say most of the fans were very courteous, and there was no pushing and shoving, but I do get the feeling that there were scalpers out there, and they were kind of buying up everything they could get their hands on. So by the time someone like me, who was 25th in line, I didn't really get the items I was looking for. I didn't really a lot of the action figures, the Black Series figures, already bought up by the time I got to the aisle, or at least grabbed off the shelves by the time I got to the aisle. So, seems like some of the stores didn't really plan ahead as far as how much merchandise they were going to sell. Now, folks, I know we all want to blame the stores for dropping the ball on this, but let's look at the reality of the situation. For months now, the Star Wars merchandise that has been out there, the Rebels figures, some other Black Series figures, some ships, some Lego items, well, that stuff's been sitting on the shelves. Hardly anyone touching it. So, what were the stores to think? Did they think that there was going to be a huge line for people waiting to get their hands on new Star Wars merchandise when the old stuff was just sitting there in the shelves? Were they overly cautious and was like, you know what? We're not going to have a lot of peg warmers again, so let's just get the bare bones amount of merchandise out there, and if everyone gets what they want, fine. If not, oh well. Kind of create some demand that's already there. But as I was on Twitter over the weekend, it seems like a lot of the stores were a lot of people were disappointed in the stores, especially stores like a Walmart and Target, or not Target, Walmart and Toys R Us, where people were made to wait in line, and then when they got into the store, it was just one aisle or even a half of an aisle of Star Wars merchandise. Not even more to it than that. So it was I don't know. I think I was a little bit disappointed by the initial night of Force Friday. Was kind of hoping it would be a little bit better, but ended up going out the next morning to my local Disney store, and the store I the store I know of that I go to, they actually opened at 6. I did not know that they opened at 6. I got there around 9:30 or so. But hardly anybody in there. A lot of merchandise still on the shelves. In fact, most of the merchandise was still on the shelves. It looked like it's hardly touched. In fact, some of the employees there were a little bit surprised that people weren't there earlier. So, I was able to get my hands on a new series, which I was not familiar with, but it's the Elite series of action figures. These are, I believe, exclusive to the Disney store, but I gotta say, folks, these are awesome. If you can get your hands on these are great. They're a little bit bigger in scale than the Black Series. They're actually stand about 7.5 inches tall, so when you put them side by side by your Black Series figures, if you do so, you'll notice that the Black Series is a little bit smaller. Most of the Elite Series figures stand about as tall as the Chewbacca figure it does in the Black Series. So kind of doesn't make Chewbacca stand above all the rest. But I managed to pick up 4 of these. Like I said, they're die cast. They feel excellent in your hands. Like, it just really feels like something of substance. So I picked up the New Order Stormtrooper. I picked up Captain Phasm. I picked up Finn, and I picked up Kylo Ren. And like I said, folks, these are awesome. I think these are truly some of my favorite Star Wars toys. Being a collector from way back, these truly do feel awesome. I would say this, folks, the articulation on them is a little bit less than the Black Series figures. They have more than the 5 points of articulation, but they're a little bit stiffer. The elbows and knees bend, but they're not really posable. Probably due to the nature of the die-cast material, the metal material that they're using, and they just feel like they're more solid than they are posable. But you can get some cool action poses out of them, even so. So look for those, folks. Apparently, there's a schedule for more figures coming out in this Elite series. We're even going to get some of the older characters, so look for in the coming months. We're going to get a Darth Vader, we're going to get a Boba Fett, we're going to get a Darth Maul, we're going to get an old school Stormtrooper, and much more. So this is definitely a series that I think I'm going to try to continue on and go from there. So as I went through the weekend, I kind of went on my usual journey to usual shopping places, running errands, and managed to go to a bunch of different stores. Even went to a local mall that had a ton of stores, and noticed that some stores like Kohl's, I don't know if you have a Kohl's near you folks, but this is kind of a department store here in Chicago, and they kind of went all out. They had merchandise throughout the stores, all kinds of toys and clothing. Lots of women's clothing, which my wife was very pleased to see, because a lot of the other stores did not have anything geared towards the ladies, so that was nice. Did not go into a Best Buy, but I did go into a Bed Bath & Beyond, and of course I went awfully late, so the Sphero BB-8 was already sold out, but I did see it on display and looked pretty cool. I don't know if I'm going to end up dropping the $150 for that, although I'd love to annoy my cat with it. I don't know if I can justify that price. I may break down and get the lesser priced Target exclusive if I can find that, but BB-8 definitely looks cool. I would say of all the toys, I think the in my opinion, the BB-8 remote controls and the this Elite series from Disney are definitely the highlights, but lots of other toys on the shelves, a lot of stuff that you can kind of tell is probably not going to sell very well. So I even saw a new Jar Jar Binks action figure character, some kind of build-a-character type of thing. I don't think that's going to sell very well, but nice that they're throwing stuff out there. So that was my take on Force Friday and Force Friday throughout the weekend. Seems like everywhere I turned, Star Wars is everywhere, especially at the mall I went to. Almost every other store had something of Star Wars merchandise in it. So it's back, folks. We all knew it was coming. It's back. And I think in the coming months we're just going to get more and more bombarded with this stuff. So beware. Beware. I think was also interesting. Not a lot of spoilers to come out of all this merchandise. We've gotten, some of the characters, some of the masks actually have voice chips in them, so that we get lines from the movie. Specifically, we get a Kylo Ren mask and figures that have voice chips in them. Kylo Ren saying some interesting lines from the movie. Captain Phasm saying some interesting lines. And what's cool is we get to actually hear their voices. We get an idea of what they're going to sound like, and to me they sound very Star Wars correct, so I'm happy with that. We even get a Finn, some lines from Finn. You can track these down on the internet. There's some Vine videos and YouTube videos that are people holding up microphones to the action figures as they press the voice chip buttons. So, but not really giving away a lot. I think the Kylo Ren action figure probably gives out the most details. Talks about being immune to the light, about looking for a scavenger, about that weapon being mine, and kind of hunting down the Last Jedi. So, these are all allusions to the rumored plot points that we've heard, that Luke is in hiding, and possibly Kylo Ren is obsessed with Vader, and he's maybe after Rey, who seems to be the scavenger, possibly trying to find Luke or his weapon. So nothing new there, but it kind of just totally solidifies some of the rumors that we've been hearing, especially now that we hear it directly from characters' mouths. So there's that. So what else was I really excited about from Force Fridays? Well, as I mentioned, the books came out. The new books, the books that are the journey that's leading up to The Force Awakens. This is the new canon books that are being basically rewriting over that 30-year period between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. This is the period that most of the EU had expanded upon in great detail, and now it's all gone and being rewritten, and we're going to get something like 30 books in the next few months, I suppose. But the books that came out, of course, Aftermath, Star Wars Aftermath by Chuck Wendig. We get 3 junior series books. I believe these are shorter stories. One of them focusing on Luke. I believe this is still the period between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. So we have Weapon of the Jedi. We have a Han Solo book, Smuggler's Run, and then we have a Princess Leia book entitled Moving Target. And I'm gonna focus on those books in the coming weeks. I want to kind of do a series of SW Dog episodes that are really the journey to The Force Awakens as well. So I'm going to be covering these books in the coming weeks. We also got another book called Lost Stars by Claudia Gray. I don't know much about this book, but I pre-ordered them all on the iTunes bookstore, and they've all loaded onto my iPad, so I will be reading them soon. But folks, let's concentrate this episode on Aftermath, because this is the book that a lot of us had been waiting for. This is the book that takes place mere months after Return of the Jedi. Now, a lot of us didn't know what to make of this book. A lot of us didn't know, is this going to be the continuing adventures of Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia? We already got that in the Thrawn trilogy. We got that in Dark Empire. What is this going to be? Is this going to be, what new are they going to give us? So, what I want to do is, since I've read this book, and there's a lot to go through in this book, I wanted to kind of break it down a little bit in chunks, because I think there's a lot here. I think there's a lot to go over in this book, and I think there's a lot that needs to be said about this book. This is really, the start of a new trilogy, that's going to be told in books, and there's hints at what's going to happen, or characters we're going to see in The Force Awakens. So what I wanted to do is, kind of take the rest of this episode to just give you my overall opinion of this book, having just finished it momentarily. Kind of give you the SW Dog review. We're also going to be posting later in the week a written review by our SW Dog reviewer, Steve Sheaves-Schinder, and he will give his take on the review, on the book, which will be a little bit different from mine, probably a little bit more educated and in depth. But I shoot from the hip here on the podcast, so it is what it is. But from there, later in the week, I will probably be posting a spoilerific review of the book, kind of going more in depth into the main story of the book. And then from there, I may end up breaking it into even a third episode, because this book has interspersed throughout the main story of the book. There's a series of interludes, short stories, really brief stories, very much on the order of what we have been receiving in Star Wars Insider, the short stories of it that have been published there. Look back a couple episodes. I started to talk about those in an episode called Little Cannons. But there's a lot of short stories that are told in this book, and I think those are very crucial to the future of Star Wars. So I think I'm going to cover those separately. So look for a few Aftermath episodes in the near future for SW Dog. So from there, let's just talk about the book in as spoiler free as I can. So what is this book, folks? So this takes, like I said, it takes place about 3 months after the Battle of Endor, the celebration that happens there, and I should point out to the readers, anybody who's cautious about picking this book up, do not expect this to be a book about Han Solo, Princess Leia, or Luke Skywalker. They are mentioned in it. A couple of the characters are in it briefly, but this is by and far not an adventure about our main characters. This is really truly a new chapter. This is new characters, a new adventure. Some would say not really leading up to The Force Awakens in any significant way, but yeah, it's a story basically of a group of characters and how they get together and their adventures on how they're dealing with the Empire. The Empire in this is not the Empire that we received in the Thrawn trilogy, where Grand Admiral Thrawn is very confident in moving the Empire forward without the Emperor and Darth Vader. This is a Empire that is scattered and power hungry and doesn't really know how to move forward. We see more of the future of the Star Wars universe through the eyes of the Empire, as opposed to the Rebellion, or New Republic as it's being called. The New Republic really is kind of sidelined on this. They're in it, obviously, but this is not the story of how the New Rebellion is being established, or what the key characters are doing there. This is truly, you're getting it more of a view of what the bits and pieces of the Empire is doing. Most of the story takes place on a planet we've never heard of before. It's called Akiva. A few of our characters are actually from this planet, so hence this is why it's taking place there. This is a story of... it's really a story about... It's a rescue mission. It's a story of Imperial Summit that's happening, and what the good guys are trying to do to prevent it from happening. We have one of the main characters in this is a bounty hunter, and her bounty is on one of the Imperials. She is working for the New Republic. So, like I said, a lot of different characters going on here, a lot of different things. So, like I said, the book is broken up into chapters of the main story, and then every 3, 4 chapters we get an interlude chapter, and this is one of those short stories that kind of breaks up the action a bit and tells a different tale that's going on in a different part of the galaxy. So, in my take on this, as I started reading this, I was very confused about what was going on. This is truly a Star Wars book like no other that I've read. I jokingly was referring to this book as the War and Peace of the Star Wars books, because the number of characters were introduced in this book in very short order is a little bit overwhelming. It takes a good chunk of chapters to actually kind of get your bearings on what's going on and who's important, who is just a side character that you don't have to really be paying a lot of attention to, who's a character in an interlude that's really not going to appear again in the book. But those first few chapters, you're literally getting bombarded with characters and backstories, and it's happening very quickly. So I was a little overwhelmed at first, not the Star Wars book that I was expecting. But once I got about, maybe a quarter of the way through the book, I was like, oh, I get it. So this focusing on this handful of characters here, you have these side story missions, and then you have kind of the supporting characters which aren't as important to the plot. We have probably a handful of Imperials with a focus on maybe 2 to 3 of them. We have a handful of, I'm just going to call them rogue characters since they're not really a part of the rebellion. A bounty hunter, an ex-Imperial, a rebellion pilot and her son, as well as his droid. Those are pretty much the main characters throughout the book. We have familiar characters. We do have Admiral Akbar playing a role in this. We also have Wedge Antilles playing a role in this, in a kind of a 180 from how Wedge has been portrayed in the expanded universe. He is not the leader of the Red Squadron, Rogue Squadron. He is more of he's the person that needs rescuing in this. So, I feel like the author, Chuck Wendig, is really kind of taking established ideas and turning them on their heads throughout this book. He is definitely trying to take a lot of things from what we know about the prequels and the Clone Wars series and kind of working them in, weaving them into the overall story. So, he's doing a good job of really tying events and people and places of the prequel era into the original trilogy era. So, good on him for doing that. I did really appreciate that. I would say this, my overall review of the book, my overall opinion of the book is this. I think it's a good read. I think it's a solid story. I think there's a lot of great Star Wars stuff in this. Still waiting for it to tie into the overall story. Not a lot of twists and turns in this book, but we do kind of are left on a little bit of a twist at the end. Reading through it the first time around, I would say this: if you're going to read it and you're willing to do this, I would read all the chapters that are the main story first, and leave out the interlude chapters until later. They are not significant to the overall story, and in fact, in my opinion, I think that they really make the story disjointed. The way it's told, the way, like I said, every other chapter or so is kind of an interlude. It really kind of makes me stop and think as I pick the book up later. What were our main characters doing? What was the last thing to do? I was constantly kind of going back a chapter and just kind of reading the last few paragraphs to kind of catch up on, oh yeah, they were there and they were doing this. And then we skipped ahead to, Coruscant with a completely different storyline going on. And then going back to, the characters, a day later, I was like, I'm just kind of a little... It all just feels a little disjointed. I wish they hadn't done that in the way they did, but it's a style. It's definitely a way of making the Star Wars universe feel bigger. Never once did I ever really feel like, oh, this is so and so because he knows this person or he's related to this person, or it never really feels like it's a smaller universe. It's definitely making the universe feel bigger by adding all of these interlude stories into it. So I would give the book a solid B+, I think. It's got great action. It's got great characters. Once I really started to gravitate to who the main characters are and what they're doing, I really started to enjoy them. But I think I'll end that here for now, folks. I think I want to definitely look back on my notes of this book and give you a real episode that really just kind of dives into the main story of this and really, isn't worried about spoilers, but But I wanted to give everyone an episode just that runs down what this book is, because I think there were a lot of question marks out there in people's heads as to, is this going to be, the main characters? Is there going to be side characters? What is it? So, it's a bunch of new characters with very minimal of our main characters in this. So, if that's something you want to pick up, please do pick up this book. Find it at your local, wherever they sell books nowadays. Like I said, I got mine on the iTunes store. It's definitely there. But until then, folks, I will be bringing you a more spoiler episode of this book later on in the week. Until then, folks, you have been listening to another episode of Delusions of Granular. You can find us on iTunes or Stitcher, as well as find all of our episodes at delusionsofgranular.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/swdog or on Twitter at swdog77. And as always, if you want to contribute to any of our shows, please call us at 651-337-9364. That's 651-33-SWDOG. Or email us at swdog77@gmail.com. All right, folks, until next time, stay granular.
From the evil destruction to the rally of tears, we pour it all into voicemail, and we rang in the year. And the midnight martyrs, well, they still hang on the cross. Well, you can die in the gutter, baby, learn to live with the loss. Well, I've been standing on the corner watching people walk on, thinking about a photograph. How so many people choose a lesser evil, living in the aftermath. Well, I keep standing on the corner, everybody's talking. Remember when we used to laugh? How so many people choose a lesser evil, never give a piece of chance.